It's Friday, December 10th, 2021 at 10:37 a.m. here locally in Southern Oregon. This is the OneHiraethProject's DiaryCast number 17, entitled We Are Creators. And we are. And I have proof. As many who have had some sort of mystic or spiritual experience in their lives, I too have come eye to eye with my own share of otherworldly encounters, both of wonderment and amazement, of challenge and contrast, all leading me to support the theory that we create our own reality. While here in Oregon, cocooned as I've been in this sort of hotbed of intrinsic phenomenon found in the elements of nature in this metaverse of possibility, the curtains have been drawn and this proof of which I speak has been presented to me with a pinpointed clarity. Clarity that may or may not be accepted or even believed by the masses. Yet with that understanding in mind, I will do my utmost to offer my perspective in hopes that those that find this video are able to, let's say, open their hearts to what I'm sharing. Let's start with the event that occurred this week that triggered these synaptic connections of illumination for me. My son is looking to buy his first home. He's narrowed down where he wants to live to 2 locations on Long Island. One of those is a village that I've had an affinity for about 5 years, and a place I would be thrilled to call home. This little seaside town is not one that I've ever mentioned to my son, nor is it one that he spent any significant time during his 32 years of life. I've never looked at this location as one that I could even afford to set up a house, and as such, it's never entered my mind but once to consider moving there. That once occurred in November of 2017 when I found what I thought was an apartment right on Main Street available for 6 months that I could afford, and in the renting offer me the opportunity to walk the area and find another affordable long-term place to reside. Unfortunately, though, due to unexpected, unplanned financial events that took me by surprise, the money I needed for move-in costs was no longer available, so I had to scrap the idea before it even became a serious consideration. From that point forward, it never occurred to me to try again, so I happily moved on. Or so I thought. Now keep in mind that I've been a traveler for over 6 years, leaving my home on Long Island in the hands of my son. Moving to another locale was not something that I'd even thought about except for that one time in November of 2017. And this one-off was not something I ever mentioned to my son. There simply was no reason to. A few days ago, my son told me that he'd refined his home search and that this little town was his number 1 choice. The details of how he arrived at this choice began last spring or summer when he learned of a grant offered by the town for those looking for their first-time home purchase. They were offering a substantial amount to assist in covering down payment and closing costs as long as the purchaser had a home in mind that was in this town. How this information about the grant found its way to my son was through his work. He's in the Carpenters Union, and apparently during a casual conversation with a coworker, this grant came up and sparked his attention. From there, he contacted the township and got more information. However, it was only recently that he discovered that he made too much money to qualify, yet the seed had already been planted. He'd driven the area, focused on it in his online searches, and with a whetted appetite, his desire led him to strategize long-term benefits of ownership in that area. Yet, with the awareness that the grant was no longer an option, his laser focus on that spot was obviously relaxed. However, on Thanksgiving, while at a dinner party at the home of a family friend, he was introduced to one of her co-workers. This friend of a friend asked him for a ride home with the enticement of giving my son and his wife a tour of his newly acquired place, which just happened to be in that same seaside town. My son told me that he was impressed, in awe, and it re-energized his desire to make that area his home. His plans now? To find a place in that area by next May of 2022. Now, the kicker is my son asked me if I would be willing to work with him to acquire this dream home through a small gift of money towards the down payment, wrapped in an invitation to live with him and his wife. Of course, I said I would consider it if the right property were available, once set up so that I had my own space, and one where I had a voice. I didn't want to end up in my son's house under my son's rules, especially if I strongly disagreed. To achieve this in what I felt was the most fair way, I told him I would consider the possibility, but I would insist on paying rent, something that I could afford that may even be less than what I've been spending monthly as a traveler. I also said I'd be open as long as we did it on, let's say, an annual trial basis, with me committing, no matter what, to 1 year, and then after that first year, a year at a time until we both felt comfortable with the situation, to assure that if it wasn't working out, I had other options. I assumed my son knew that I would follow this kind of a path, and that he offered this opportunity with that awareness, knowing that it would offer him a monetary cushion for a committed period of time, so that if he moved forward with a purchase, it would be less stressful and more viable for him long term. Unbeknownst to him, as he was telling me this Thanksgiving story, I knew my own indirect desire to live in that area was manifesting through my son. Now, it may have been 3 years in the creation, but this isn't the first time that such a creation has presented in my life. Before I continue, let me say that I've had numerous spiritual whispers and synchronicities to confirm my feelings about this creation, as I've just described it, as it relates to this matter. One occurred just a few hours ago. Now, I woke up this morning to a long list of tasks that I needed to check off today. I wanted to get started early, but I know myself, and I knew a cup of coffee and a few minutes of distraction would lighten my mind and invite focus thereafter. That's just a knowing I have about myself. So, as I set up the coffee maker to make a few cups and open the window to welcome the sounds and smells and fresh air of a mid-December morning here in Oregon, I sat down on the floor to meditate and, let's say, talk to the universe. I asked for a sign of confirmation that the way that I was viewing my son's journey about this home shopping event was, in part, synchronized by my own indirect passion to live in that area. Once I completed this short meditation, I poured a mug of coffee, opened Hulu, and watched 5 or 10 minutes of entertainment. My choice? A TV show called The Resident, Season 3, Episode 19, entitled Support System. The response to my meditation was immediate. The scene you're about to see is from that episode of The Resident and was more than I could have ever asked for to confirm my ask. I'll insert that clip here.
Well, because your fibrosis is genetic, I asked Cheryl if she knew of anyone with premature gray hair in their 20s.
She's sure that this guy is my cousin, not just some dude that recovered from pulmonary fibrosis?
Well, a DNA test will confirm, but you cannot deny the resemblance.
Those are definitely my eyes and my nose and my chin. And everything.
His name is Gabriel, and after hearing your story, he thinks your mom is his aunt. She got pregnant as a teen and ran away from home.
And they've been searching for her and her child ever since.
Now, he's talked to the rest of his family, and they have agreed to be your support system, even if you're not related.
I don't even know how to thank you.
You've been longing for this your whole life. And now it's here. You've been longing for this your whole life. And now it's here.
That did it for me. That was Source speaking, responding to my request for confirmation. Now, this is only one example of how we create our own reality, most times without even knowing it. We get both immediate and divinely timed responses to our thoughts, desires, and emotions. In this, the answer to my ask was immediate. I had a specific thought, requested a message of confirmation, and the reply came clear and quick. I also have enough life experience now to recognize that those things that we express with our emotions, with our desires, whether we're directly aware of them or not, if we directly ask for them or not, are subtle in response and may take years to weave into being. Now, let me give you two personal examples to confirm what I've just shared with this interesting story of creation regarding my desire to live in a certain area and my son's now being directed to that area that he had no former knowledge of or experience with. I will be only sharing the bullet points of these stories as they are rich with detail and because they took years, sometimes decades, to present. There are two. One I'll call The Quiet Life, and the other I'll call Energetic Tattoo into the System. The Quiet Life began in the mid-2000s. I would say around 2006 or 7. I was running a club for real estate investors that I had founded around the year 2000. It was a challenge because it had grown exponentially and I was not expecting such growth. It got to a place where I was working at least 12 hours a day, often 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, year upon year, to keep this professional association going. It was more than I wanted in my life for the long term. So I remember over and over and over again for a couple of years thinking, I wish that I didn't have this pressure. I wish that I could get out of all of this stress. This is too much for me. I need a break. I wish that I lived in a life where I could just be on my own. And I didn't mean that with any disregard for my son. I knew that there would be a time when my son would grow up and grow out of the house, or at least I assumed that would happen. But I knew that I would be happier if I could figure out a way to do my work from home and do it at my own pace and have all the control that I wanted and enough money to be comfortable. I never could figure out how to make that happen. It just seemed beyond possibility. So as much as I wanted it, as much as I remember thinking about it, just in fleeting thoughts, not with any real momentum behind it or even feeling that it was possible but not probable. So there came a time, I think it was around 2007, when the mortgage crisis hit and a newspaper writer wrote an article about some deceptive, fraudulent activities in the mortgage business happening in Florida. The interesting thing is that he made this huge leap that was untrue, that tied my club and me directly as the culprits, as the ones making this happen. What he said was that I was aware of some deals that were going on there and that I had increased my attendance at this meeting with knowledge of this fraudulent activity with the sole purpose of bringing a larger audience in to be duped out of their money during this event in August. Now, what he was referring to was that one of my 4 speakers, I think I had that night, was talking about these deals in Florida. He, too, had no knowledge of the underbelly of what was attached to them with respect to this fraudulent mortgage plan. This reporter decided to point the finger at me through this presenter, just one of our local members who had found this interesting deal to share with the audience. This article got traction. It was picked up by the Associated Press and therefore available nationwide to all newspapers. And the major newspapers across the country were reprinting this article. And this article mentioned me by name and my club by name. People believed it. It had no basis in reality. I didn't even realize that was what this particular individual was speaking about, but I wasn't there listening to his presentation. I was busy handling an audience and all those things related to such an event in the background. My monthly attendance began to fall. And it was shocking. Our club was one of the top in the country. It had gotten a lot of press over the years in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and other prestigious publications. So I sold the club the following year, in 2008. From that point forward, my life went into a personal spiral. One thing after another began to happen. My mother passed in May of 2009, had a lot of other things occur that were devastating. Let's leave it there. Yet, those things eventually got me to a place where I created a business just by chance. So now I'm able to travel the world as I have in the last nearly 7 years, and having the ability to work anywhere because all of my work is online. So that desire that I had to have the life that I currently am living happened. It never would have happened through my own efforts because I couldn't see how to get over that hurdle. So what occurred? Whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, source, just pure frequency, exchange, it doesn't matter. Higher consciousness heard me, felt more than heard me. I believe this was all emotion-based, and that's the point. I would never be where I am now had that article not been written, had all the challenges that presented thereafter not occurred. I would not have found myself in a place where I now live this life that I inadvertently asked for. Now, the second story, the energetic tattoo into the system, during this process of which I'm speaking, one of the things that occurred is that my son faced a personal challenge of a magnitude that is private. And in that process, I ended up in a legal battle, which was not because of my son at all, but it was a consequence, a byproduct of that choice. Now, that legal case also was false. It was based on a big corporation choosing to sue me instead of give me what I asked for. They didn't want to give me what I asked for. They wanted more money from me. So instead of giving me what I asked for, they sued me prematurely. There's a certain set of laws that require a certain time pass and certain things take place that they did not do. But they sued me anyway. And when they sued me, they never served me. And they did that on purpose. Being someone who worked in the legal field for 20 years, I know how this works. And they said they served me personally, but they never served me at all with any kind of service. I only discovered the lawsuit because I am astute, because I had that background. And I started getting letters in the mail that I recognized as being something that happens when you are involved in this kind of a lawsuit. But I knew right away because of my experience. So I went to the courthouse, looked it up, and saw, in fact, that they not only had sued me prematurely, but had said they served me, and they had not. And I was really lucky. Their description of me was so far off. They were off by 100 pounds, approximately. They had me taller than I was, even if I wore high heels, which I never do. They said my hair color was one thing and it was another, and so on. So I felt very confident about moving forward and bringing this to their attention. So I did not hire a lawyer on purpose because I did not want to be bound to the system. This case didn't exist. It was moot because they had not served me, and a case cannot proceed without service. So that was almost 10 years ago. Blatantly unjust. In October of 2019, I had an opportunity to file a motion that addressed all the corruption I saw, all the untruths that I saw, proving with the evidence attached as exhibits to the plaintiff's own documents, to which I was responding with my motion to their motion. I was able to prove that they were lying. I mean, it was absolutely clear that they were lying. Then that the person that swore to the affidavit that everything was true swore to something that was false. So I put all of that in the motion, and that was 2 years ago, and that motion has yet to be decided. But the thing is, that motion I knew was the end of my participation in this suit. And that this suit itself was in response to something I had asked for indirectly without being aware of it. The thing that I had asked for probably around early 2000s when I was still working in the law firm. I was running my club and working in the law firm at the same time for a few years. I saw so much corruption in my 20 years in the law firm, and I saw how it hurt, the average Joe, that I thought to myself, if there was only a way that I could put into the permanent record someday, or that it could be put into the permanent record someday by someone who had the kahunas to take that leap, wouldn't it be great? Because no matter what, it would still be of record. No one could ever take it away. My thought was, well, if it could at least be in the system, that maybe, just maybe, someday in the future, it could be found by someone who could do something with it. And I was thinking, 50 years, 100 years, just sometime in the future, at least it would be evidence, undisputable evidence somehow in the public record. They were just fleeting thoughts, just thoughts we have every day that we don't control. They come in, they go out, and they don't stick or have any substance we're aware of. But they're backed with such a desire and emotion that it frequently signals the energetic field, however that works, and the process begins. They're like, oh, that's what you want? Okay. And it begins to manifest. But the minute that I read the other side's motion and saw all of this evidence that proved that they were lying in their own documents, I couldn't believe that this had just been handed to me. And now I had that opportunity to talk about not only the corruption, but sovereignty as it relates to the legal process. And that's exactly what I did. And I will leave links in the description as to where you can look at those documents that I filed if you wish to. So those are two examples, decades in the making, or years in the making, from nothing more than fleeting thoughts that I had no genuine intention and put no motivation behind to create. They created and found their way to me. So to get what you want, to get what you ask for, desire, you may have to follow a path that is ripe with challenge you would never want if you could balance it against this desire that you have. So if you are aware that you create your own reality, then you have the ability, while you're having these thoughts, through pure awareness, to modify them. But if you don't, things that happen in your life that are extremely challenging, like this guy in that TV show finding that he has lung cancer, but finding out about it gave him exactly what he wanted when it came to connecting to his family. You at least have the ability to control that process. With these three examples now that I've shared of how we create our own reality with every thought, every emotion, some we have direct awareness of, and others the universe, reading and decoding emotions and desires, communicated and processed at a frequency, at an energetic level. With these experiences, I've learned to get what you want. You may have to live through challenges you would never invite yourself. Never. Yet, to reach the desired outcome, the pathway chosen by that which exists, let's say through quantum connection, doesn't ask permission or proceed with judgments or deductive choice, but through a pattern of flow in the fabric of possibilities. That is, unless you tune your awareness so that you are an active participant in the process through thought and emotional awareness, course correction along the way is possible. If I changed just one thing, those outcomes I'm happy with today would never have occurred. So for me, I choose faith. I choose to surrender to that expanded consciousness that has pillowed me within a plasma field of possibilities and found roots to bring me exactly what I desired. In the end, I feel the learning experiences that I will acquire before I pass on to whatever is awaiting me next are a gift of knowing. And for this week, I will leave it there.